Welcome to Humbly the Best Celtics podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, here with Mike and Joel, three diehard fans and friends breaking down each game throughout the season for you. The journey to Banner 18.
All right, here we go. Welcome to Humbly, the Best Boston Celtics podcast. This is your host, Brandon, Mike, and Joel. We are talking 2023-2024 season. We are ready for Banner 18. Welcome, boys. Let's talk about some Boston Celtics basketball.
Let's get into it.
All right. Well, first we're going to jump in. I think it's a must. We must recognize Marcus Smart. The departure of Marcus Smart. The question is, did the Celtics lose the heart and soul? You know,
that's the question. That's the only way we're going to word it. Did they? Maybe it's a good thing. I'm going to be on an island on this take, but I've been trying to trade Marcus Smart for 5 years now. I don't know about you, but I am not going to miss the 2 seconds in the shot clock 3 when our offense has been struggling. And this past year, injury or not, I'm not going to miss the get blow-bys by Quickly and whoever else the Knicks guards decide to roll out there in late game situations. So they might have lost, in my opinion, they might have lost the heart and soul, but I guess it's time for a heart transplant, and I'm psyched for it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you asked me a day before the trade went down, would you trade Marcus Smart? I'd say yeah. You know, I've let him lead the point guard position for quite a while. You know, been on the team for quite a while. But at the end of the day, it's about championships. I want a ring, you know, and obviously we gave him that shot at point guard for quite a while. And I can't say I've been the happiest with what we've seen. And I think we would all agree that the defense last year from Marcus Smart was not the DPOY defense that we had seen in years prior.
Yeah, I was willing to give him a kind of a shot with him leading us to the finals, right? Was that 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Finals. And so I was like, man, maybe he can lead us there. And then I think it was just like what you're saying, Brandon, it was such a drop off from that year to last year. It was just his defense wasn't the same defensive player of the year. Like that just wasn't, I didn't see that from him on a nightly basis. And his scoring, if his defense isn't there, his scoring is a liability. So
yeah, his shot selection is a liability is probably the best way to word it. And here's the thought process, right? There's a definition of insanity that's super cliche, like trying the same thing over and over again. And I think the front office and the team had seen enough of the same thing in the playoffs year after year where the offense just stalled out and they had less options. And I think there's a world where you could see that the Celtics like did the classic Bill Belichick, moved on just in time, and instead of hanging on to a player past their prime. Because love him or not, but and I do, I'm super thankful for what he had. I was being kind of tongue in cheek about trying to trade him for years, but it's just the classic like fire everyone, get rid of anyone that misses a shot. But his defense had declined to the point where it was becoming a liability. And when you have a player who's starts the offense, which a lot of times I feel like they had Marcus do just over especially over the last 2 years. And 2 years ago, it completely unlocked him and he went up a level because of it. But last year, it just became more of a liability than anything. So if you were to come to me before the offseason started and say, would you trade, and this isn't the exact trade, obviously, I know that, but would you trade Drew Holiday for Marcus Smart, even after the Milwaukee series against the Heat? I'd make that deal 10 times out of 10. Like how I couldn't make that deal fast enough. Because that's really, if you look at how the offseason played out, that's really how what worked out. You got Drew and Marcus, like in Marcus's role. You then, not to steal thunder from moving forward, but KP is basically in Rob's role. We'll be playing Rob's role as kind of that floater player that they have, but also some of Al Horford lighting his load by being a stretch five. So I think those are deals that you have to make because the upside is just there. Now with the KP, I think that might lower your floor a little bit, but with Marcus Smart, I just don't see the drawback really that for Drew swapping out Drew Holiday for Marcus. And I have great memories of Marcus. He's been here from when we sucked at the beginning with Brad. Like, remember being bummed about how we finished in the lottery for that one. right?
Yeah.
And then you got more out of him than you could have ever hoped for at the 5th or 6th pick, whatever it was happened to be that year. But in
yeah,
what some people are calling a
I think
downdraft.
for me it's like, hey, we want to win now, right? Like we got our guys. I want Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. I know to keep them, you got to win, right? And it's like as a fan, as a winner, it's like, hey, go get rid of Marcus Smart and yeah, like you just said, upgrade to Drew Holiday all day long. Get Kristaps Porzingis, brings a different aspect to the offense we'll get to, but like as a diehard fan, the green hair, the love and trust, like the captain of the Celtics in my mind, it's like that's where it's like, man, it stings to lose them. It'll be cool to welcome them back, but I think the media is the funniest part you'll always get, where it's like everyone hated on Marcus Smart when we had him. The Celtics don't have a true point guard and all those kind of things, and then now we lose them, and it's like, oh no, the Celtics are in this big danger. You know, it's like that Boston hated media. It's like no one loved them, and now you talk Memphis, like they've got an all-star where we didn't consider him as a starter on the Celtics when he was with us. But
Yeah, I think
anything you want to add, Mike, on Marcus?
Yeah, I think just the overall, right, over the offseason, I love what Brad did. Because with Danny Ainge, we'd always hear about all these trades that are coming and nothing ever happened year after year, right? Brad Stevens did the difficult thing, right? He did the difficult thing of moving on, trading four players, right? 4 key pieces to our franchise for 2 all-stars. Because we know you have to, in this league, to win a championship, you have to have stars. So
it's definitely 100%.
Getting Porzingis was an obviously, again, you lose a guy like Rob. I mean, Rob, I'm a big fan of Rob, but the dude couldn't stay healthy. I mean, he was a menace on defense when he was locked in and healthy. Grant Williams, he kind of had his ups and downs. And Smart and Brogdon, right? So I'm doing that trade every single day, getting those 4 pieces away for 2 guys that will hopefully bring us banner 18.
Yeah. I think it does 2 things for you too, because you're so much more versatile now on offense because you have players at every position that are a threat to score. Because if you really think about it, like with the way Marcus, like his shot always has been, he's just so streaky. So there are games that you were hoping he would take shots, and I mean, just being a fan, like it always felt like there were games after he hit a couple shots in the first quarter, and then all of a sudden he just went ice cold, right? But at this point now, like Drew is great for a guard. He's great finishing in the paint. He can push the ball. And then you also have more ball handlers. And let's not forget either, the moving on from Marcus is also to open up time for Derek White too. So both of those guys offensively, they just give you more versatility. And then they're not really like a downgrade on that's the thing too, is they're not really a downgrade on defense either. They're the same quality, if not for what we saw last year. And I'm not saying that Marcus can't come back this year, and I wouldn't put it past him to have like a prove it year and really go out there and just ball out, especially his first 25 games when Memphis doesn't have Ja. But like just to go crazy, I could see it happening 100%. But at the same time, like there are moves that you make for October, and then there are moves that you make for May and June. And those are like the moves they made, I feel, are more for like April, May, June, when we want to see wins more than in October, like getting off that crazy start that we had last year with the crew we had. So
I agree.
Overall, I would say positive.
I think Marcus Smart will be a Boston Celtic again one day. I really believe they'll bring him back. I think they will. But we got Grant. Obviously, last we can go quicker on Grant, as his time wasn't the longest.
That's all right. DMP for me for Grant, just like Joe did on him.
Yeah, I mean that. I honestly, on that take, like that's kind of my take on it as well. Whereas it's like Joe didn't use him. Like I'm not gonna pay somebody to sit on the bench. Joe didn't use him for whatever reason. We could agree or disagree. Should he have came in the Heat series earlier? Things like that. I like Grant. I thought he was cool for the locker room. He's Tatum's buddy, and we saw him grow. I think. I think last year I didn't see as much growth as I wanted to. I really wanted to get him away from just shooting those threes to giving more pump fakes, driving, maybe some paint work. Didn't really see that out of him. But
here's the thing: when he tried
in the offense, forget it.
He kicked the ball out of bounds. You know what I mean? Like it's just not a tool that he had in the repertoire. And the other thing is too, like, was he a great locker room guy? I think some of the moves they made were like a bet on Joe, like moving on from Grant, obviously a guy that he butted heads with, couldn't find a role for him,
Sure,
and
yeah, coaching
Marcus's
wise, yeah.
leadership and stuff like that, taking over huddles and all that. I don't think that's nothing. You know what I mean? Like clearing the way as far as a leadership role. You got a really vocal guy in Grant who, I mean, Ime used to tell to shut the F up all the time. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
getting those guys out of his way and letting Joe build the culture he wants and run the team the way he wants to, I think is also part of it. And asking more from your star players, you know what I mean? Like when you have those vocal leaders that are already established in the locker room, when these guys are coming into their own, Tatum and Brown, I feel like we'll see more kind of a vocal leadership from those two, or at least that's what I'm hoping to see.
We have to hope
out
so.
of this. Yeah. So
Mike,
I
anything
think
on your Grant departure?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like what Joel was saying, like it was not a huge loss. I think the biggest thing going into this year is Joe having a full offseason that he didn't have last year, right? He got thrown
100%, yeah.
season started, and that was a lot of pressure. And obviously, I didn't agree with a lot of his coaching decisions last year. His no timeout thing, like that, to me was like crazy. Like that, you're trying to redo like 100 years of basketball, like not calling timeouts when they're doing a big runner and you're losing it, right? Like that was crazy. So I think that having like kind of Joel saying, having Brown and Tatum, they have to be the leaders of your team. They're your two star players. Brown had that massive contract extension that he earned this offseason. So I'm looking for them to lead. You have to have your stars lead. And I'm hoping they take that ownership role with having more of the vocal guys of like a Smart and a Grant who are just more, you just see Grant talking all the time. Same thing with Smart, right?
Yeah.
So now I think that's torches. I think that's why they had to move those pieces out, because your stars have to lead the team. So I'm looking forward to kind of see what, with the absence of those two guys in particular, kind of what Brown and Tatum do this year.
I'll end the Grant before we move on to Rob. The minute I knew he was done with Boston, I'll make them both.
Yeah.
At the free throw line. That was it for me. Like, you're done, bro. You only had to make one, and then you told him you were going to make both. So he's done. All right, but on to Rob. Rob, just a guy, man, I had high hopes for him. Mike, I know you really did. Not as vocal, but so much potential in one guy that I feel like we never saw the full potential out of him. Like we saw some glimpses, but it was like just couldn't stay healthy. It was kind of like for me, like, is it worth giving away Rob when all the holiday trades were kind of leaking and we were in the mix, and it was like, man, this Rob guy, I knew Brogdon had to go, but it was like Rob, but it was like, is he one of those guys where he just can't stay healthy anymore? As bad as it is, it's like a Hayward after his injury. And if I want to win a championship, I want less people in the mix of saying, well, I hope they're healthy, right? I don't think it's a stretch of imagination to say we're hoping Kristaps stays healthy this year, right? Like he had a healthy year last year. But with him and Rob together, was that too much of a hope together, hoping they both stay healthy? So interesting your guys' take, but I was okay with losing Rob only for the injury's sake, and I feel like with Kristaps there and Horford, I feel okay in the position and the style of offense that we play.
Yeah, if I could have kept one out of the four guys, it would have been Rob. Like if there was a way to keep him, I just loved how he anchored our defense. Just his athleticism is something I've never seen on the Celtics before. I've never seen a guy who just plays above the rim on both ends, right? Like this is coming out of nowhere to block shots and those crazy dunks, and like he was electric, when he was on the court.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely gonna miss him, but I think the other side of it is, again, like, to start the year with Portland, he's already injured. So I think that's the other side of it, is just like you have to have players that can be there night in, night out. So love him. He's definitely gonna be the one that stings the most for me as far as just a pure talent. I'm definitely gonna miss Rob out there. He was a beast.
Yeah,
100%. I agree with that. If there was anyone that we could have kept that we lost this offseason, I probably would agree with you that it would be Rob over everyone else. Even though it does hurt after all that, saying all that about losing Smart, it does hurt to lose him. Just him have been here for so long. You really want to get over the hump with your guys, and really Rob and even more than Grant, Rob and Marcus felt like part of the core of the team, because they were solid rotation players with defined roles and all that. So Rob, it just comes down to the age-old cliche: the best ability is dependability. Like, can you count on the guy to show up for 9 months? And it really, like, out of his everything, of course, out of his control. It's not like an effort issue or anything like that. Just when you're that big and that athletic and that much weight going up and down, it's just a matter of time for
Not good
injuries.
for his knees.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a matter of time for something to go wrong. You know what I mean? Just a foot in the wrong spot, whatever it is. And I don't know. I will say, much like not missing the stress of Marcus's like 3 seconds into the shot clock threes, I'll not miss the stress of every time Rob lands on the floor wondering how much time it is. You know what I mean? He must have led the league in, oh man, how long is he going to be out for? After
For
every
locker
ball.
room trips.
Yeah,
How many times do we
exactly.
see him go to the locker room, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
How many times we see that walk out from into the locker room? Yeah, from the bench. 100%.
Yeah, he knew just refreshing Twitter, like what is going on.
Yeah. He definitely lead leaguer in locker room trips. Him and Anthony Davis were first team.
Last departure, Malcolm Brogdon. You know, I love Brogdon. I think at times he was huge for the Celtics. You know, we can get into a little bit later, but, you know, talk about our rotation. I don't think we were going to have this, hopefully not have this problem this year, is when Jason Tatum wasn't on the floor, that offense could die out. And I think Malcolm Brogdon sometimes was just that cool, calm, collective guy that could come in, just veteran presence, knew what he was doing, and just ran the offense. I mean, just moved in slow motion. I mean, it was a beautiful work of art that he would perform on offense. I think he gets kind of a rough exit with how he exited in the Eastern Conference Finals with the injury. You know, a lot of Celtics were so like okay with just letting him go and getting rid of him. And I know he got hurt in the whole Kristaps trade when he heard his name getting floated around and the Clippers pulled out of that deal. So I think at that point, I knew he had to go, right? You don't want to deal with that going into the season with the goal of the championship. But I think he was a huge part of the offense last year, huge part of the bench. Can't throw away the Sixth Man of the Year award. You know, I'll miss him for sure, but I'm not too worried that we haven't filled that spot at least.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think with Brogdon, I was excited when we got him. I thought he was a really good piece. I thought he could add that ball.
Steal.
Yeah, I thought we got a pretty good deal with him. But it's not a guy that I'm really gonna miss. Again, Sixth Man of the Year, but I just didn't think he added that extra thing to get us over the edge to win the chip. Right? I felt like it was a guy that we had to move on. He's a valuable piece to get us something in return, and I think we got that with Drew. So, it was sports day, and I wish things would have worked out better, but I wish he could have brought us home a championship and probably would still be here. So,
yep,
yeah, I'd agree with that. But the other thing to think about too, like when these deals are made, it's like what's coming back? Is it an upgrade? And I know we kind of swapped with Smart, comparing Smart's role and Drew, but giving up Brogdon to get, and really it's more for the salaries to match, because I don't think if they needed the salary, he would be gone either. But there are 2 points that I think were pain points throughout the year with Brogdon, which is one of the reasons he was the first name we heard shopped in the offseason, is he was great at it, but he was a get his kind of guy, right? When he come in off the bench, the offense was all like his assist rate was probably one of the lowest in the NBA, just because that's not his game, and that's not really the role that they had him in. But it's also not something he's that great at. And then the other thing is too, like, yeah, I mean, really, that's just the main issue. Is like when you have someone coming in off the bench, and I think we'll see Pritchard more in that role as kind of like the sixth man coming off the bench, either Pritchard, Drew, or Al, just depending on who they start that day. But with giving Pritchard the keys to the bench, I really think it's gonna change how that offense looks, right? As we come off the floor. If you look at Brogdon and Brown when Tatum was on the floor, it was one of the lower efficiency lineups in the NBA. So getting guys that can move the ball and play make on that bench run, I think it's going to be a huge difference, and we're not going to see those stale minutes of basketball when we have Tatum on the bench, which is really like the pain point. And the other thing too, like just to give Brogdon some flowers, like if I really feel like if that injury didn't happen, then Miami series might be a little bit different, right? You're getting because
100%.
some of those games, especially game 2, game 1, were really close. Like, and they came down to game 3, nothing was going to change. That was just like a shellacking of the epic proportions.
Embarrassing.
But
Yeah.
game 1 and 2, like you got a guy that's 100% that's shooting above 40% for the year, like you did last year, and leading the league part of the year for 3-point percentage. You have that guy and you add him in. I think you get enough out of him to make a difference in the series. But the other part that was painful too is like just Joe not once he was hurt and realized you were getting nothing out of him, he kept putting him in there for minutes on end. Yeah, so like part of that's obviously not on Brogdon, the injury, and also going in when the coach tells you to. That's just kind of the way it goes. So I don't know.
Think here with all 4 of these players, right? The reason why these trades had to be made is the Celtics. You never saw a point throughout the year where they really clicked, especially in playoffs. Like they never played great on either end of the ball. We never had that Celtics defense where they were getting after people. Like that was never there. Like the whole team.
Oh no, it was there. Game 1 and 2 versus the Hawks series, and then it was gone for the rest of the year. They looked like the best team in the NBA game 1 and 2 of the Hawks series, and then the defensive intensity changed. And Trey just killed us for the next 3-4 games of that series, and it went way longer than it should have.
Yeah. For a team that was loaded, what a stressful playoffs, right? The rumors, we're going to sweep. Everyone's saying we're going to sweep the Hawks. After game 1 and 2, struggled. The Sixers series, my goodness, that couldn't be any more stressful. All the way down to quarter 4 in game 6. And then luckily we got a little relief in game 7 because of Jason Tatum. And then, the Heat series, down 0-3, coming all the way back, another game 7, Tatum twists his ankle. And it was just like, even if we played the Nuggets, how are we going to look, But yeah, I agree. The clicking and like that playoff chemistry, it was one stressful playoff run. It was not easy, and I know it's not easy, but
just always stuck. It was never flying around, getting other people involved. It was so much one-on-one, very poor shot selection. It was this very like frustrating brand of basketball. Like it was not,
and that's my hope with Drew, right? Like Marcus Smart, like if you want to run the point guard, lead us to a championship, we need a point guard. We need someone that's going to facilitate the offense. I know Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, we can get into that in a second, need to step up this year. They got to be leaders, get to their spots, know how to run the offense a little bit better. But as a point guard, I want someone, and I think Drew's going to be able to do this. Hey, get them in their spots, get them moving around screens, things like that, where they're not having to create all the offense, especially when they're getting double, triple teams. Jaylen Brown's getting forced left, Drew can help get to the right, things like that I think will be big. But Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum working out all summer, a couple weeks there with Paul Pierce in California. I absolutely loved it. Watched the film on it. I love it. I think them working out together. I love what Brown says. They've been doing it for a while, but everyone, is always worried about they don't get along. I just think they're the two guys that love to play basketball. They're bros. They're both wanting championships, and they know that they're in the best opportunity playing together to have the best opportunity to win is them playing together. There's no better duo in the NBA. No one's going to convince me otherwise. And them working out though with Paul Pierce, I think that goes towards that leadership, that finding out what was going on in those locker rooms back then. That 07-08 championship team. I love it. Good for Paul Pierce, losing some weight, things like that as well. Get him back at the Garden this year more. But yeah, I mean, I'm all about them working out together, taking their game to the next level together. Drew Hanlon's there working with them on shooting, things like that. I think that was huge for them this summer.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's things that happen in like entertainment called fan service, where it's just like stuff you do for your fans to freak out about. And I don't care that even if this is what that was, if Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Paul Pierce were only together one day to cut that video, fine with me, man.
I'm watching. Yeah,
I love it. And I think $300 million really makes you best friends with whoever someone tells you to be best friends with, right? You cut me a check for $300 million, and you say, "Hey, I need you to get along with this guy." I'm going to figure out a way to get along with that guy, even if we're not on the same page or we disagree about what my role is. And that's the thing. Like, you got to think about, at the end of the day, these guys are pros. they're professionals, and they're not young professionals either at this point. We're talking about year 7 for Jason and year 8 for Jalen. You know, these are guys that are consummate pros. They've been to the top of the league, right? They're guys that have made all NBA teams. They're guys that have made all-star teams. They played for Team USA. They played in the biggest games on national stages, and not just in the playoffs and in the finals, but they're on Christmas Day every year. They're in primetime games every week, it seems like. So these are guys that are pros, and they know what they've been. We give them a hard time because they haven't reached over the hump, like they haven't won the finals yet. But only one team wins that every year. So, but these are guys that know what it takes to get there. You know, they've been there. It's not guys that haven't tasted it. They've been in the Eastern Conference playoffs 5 times now in their careers. That's crazy. So they know what it takes to get along, to be professionals, to be their best selves, like what it takes for them to get to that next level. I think it's great to have a guy like Paul Pierce around and other '08 Celtics and Celtics legends, just having them in the building for that kind of stuff and that kind of camaraderie. Like as a fan, it's huge. It's like it's the thing we care about the most, right? Like we love the Celtics lore and the Celtics legends and all that stuff. So it's huge for us. And just seeing that those guys make the time to have those guys around and stuff like that is just huge. Because one, obviously they care about what the fans think. They care about all that kind of stuff. But if there is something to get from them, they can get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're past like the Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Do they belong together? Should we split them? Right? Like, as far as
I would
my
hope
mind,
so.
like that stuff's gone.
You paid him $304 million.
We just
so you got to be past
truck.
it.
But I think people worry too much about them, like in their off court, and I think they hear that, and that's kind of their jokes this off season and things like that. It's like they're going to be on the court and they're going to do their thing together. Like they want the best opportunity at the end of the day to win. But when they're off the court, like let them do whatever they want, right? Like he's like, yeah, we've worked out together before, but we didn't have to post about it, right? Like Jason Tatum's going to go around and play basketball with Deuce. Jaylen Brown's going to go to France and be all up in the fashion stuff. Like that's just who they are and how they are. They don't have to do everything
pants
together.
that are too big for him.
Right. Like let them do their things off the court. As long as they're on the court playing together, getting along in practice. And I mean, everything we see is, they're having a great time together in practice. So, I mean, I'm long past that. I just love them together working out. I just think that's huge, right? Like I don't see that a ton from other teams, right? We definitely don't see James Harden and Joel Embiid putting in work together. You don't see videos of Middleton and Giannis putting in work together. And people aren't crying about it. But
hey,
two players
Giannis works out with his teammates all the time. He works out with Coffee or whatever his brother's name is.
Yeah.
Costas or whatever.
Yeah, that's what we're worried about. Yeah. He's gonna need to start working on with Lillard, but we'll avoid that. But I just like them working together
for your best,
just for the leadership part.
For your just caveat, like a side note, I think you do kind of have to give a nod to Dame and Giannis. So, but that's besides the point.
I don't fear the deer.
Me, I was like Pierce is like obviously our childhood was Pierce, right? For so many, it was Pierce and then the others, like a bunch of guys that are just rotate in and out. And we went to that.
How dare you call Yuri Welsh an other?
Yeah, there was quite a rough moments through our Celtics childhood of going to Celtics games, and I probably went to 8, 9 Celtics games as a kid, and we lost every one of them. It was rough there for a while.
There's a reason we could afford to go as kids, though, Mike.
That is true.
Because they stopped.
$12 tickets in the nosebleeds. We were there though. But I love Pierce coming back and really mentoring Tatum and Brown, bringing the championship, the stories, the battles that he went through. Pierce was just such a prolific player for so long. And I think he's going to add a lot to what Brown and Tatum do, giving them in the mindset of the game and how to attack it, right? And then Pierce, it took him years to get a team around him, but when he did, they won that championship, right? So I'm excited with that. We'll do with him working there and all the other 08 Celtics that have been around. I think that's going to be really mentoring and just getting that championship vibe in the building. I think that
and on the staff too with
Pierce, both came in together. I love the fire that KG brings, and I just hope that really rubs off on the Celtics this year.
Yeah. I mean, we can transition into that. I mean, obviously, we're talking preseason, camp, all that stuff, right? Joe Mazzulla sends out the email inviting everyone back. We saw, I'm sure you guys saw the Rondo, his interview talking about how Pierce was so excited he called him at 3 a.m. Like, that's what I want to see. I mean, hey, we're all in on this championship. Like, the Celtics know that. The team's showing them that. They're telling these guys to come back. Rondo, just that mind. He's like running practice today. Pierce there. Yeah, I mean, KG, I want to see him front row screaming in guys' faces this year when they dunk, screaming in other guys' face from the other team. Like, that's what I want to see. Sam Cassell, obviously, on the coaching staff. I want to get those guys in the building. Kendrick Perkins, I really don't care if he shows up, but anyone else,
He'll be around.
I'm all for it.
Oh, don't worry. We'll have to hear plenty of Kendrick Perkins takes throughout the year.
No sure. Ray Allen too. I'm all set with Ray, but the other guys bringing that energy, bringing that knowledge. I'm for it. And then obviously the energy going into camp. Reported that those guys were there 2 weeks early. I mean, they just all this year more than ever. I know. I feel like probably people even that listen are going to be like, we hear this every year, right? It's like this is the Celtics year. But I truly feel like, obviously, as a diehard Celtics fan, sure, but I truly feel like this year, more than ever, we've got that, like, one goal in mind. Joe talks about all the time, this camp, like, everyone's going to sacrifice on this team this year. Starters, guys that don't get a start, coaches, everybody's sacrificing because everybody on this roster is all in on winning that championship.
I think that's one of the huge things about having those, especially 08 guys around, like having Pierce around, having KG around, and even if Ray does come around, like that kind of stuff is huge because that's what all three of them had to do in order to win a title, right? They all had their accolades, like individual accolades throughout their career before they became the big three. And then coming together, it took a lot of sacrifice, right? Ray Allen's usage rate went way down. KG was like a second thought in the offense. You know what I mean? And then like really Paul Pierce turned the team over, like the leader of the team, the unquestioned leader of the team was KG, and Paul had been around for over a decade. You know what I mean? So I think it's huge having those guys around to be able to kind of talk to those lessons and stuff like that. And obviously that's what we're hoping for. Not that we have any inside information that's what's going on, but as outsiders looking in, that's like what we're hoping is happening and what they're taking from those guys. So I love seeing them around, love having Rondo around. I've always loved Rondo and cheer from other places except for in LA. So, but that's huge, dude. I think it'll be huge. And then like just having Sam Cassell on staff, you know what I mean? Like having a real bench like behind Joe, which Joe gets a lot of crap for how last year ended and all that, but to have real guys like Sam on the bench, I'm psyched for that. Not just that Sam has history in the building and history with the team, but I think that's huge. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think Brandon was saying with the energy shift, I think a lot of that, obviously, I think after the way last year ended, right, and then this year, I think a big piece of it is that there's something with the level of excitement when you bring in new additions, star players that we
100%.
Right. Do you remember obviously
and they're buying in on that? Yeah.
When KG and Pierce or KG and Ray Allen came in that year, there was just you could feel that the whole Buntu season, right? Like was it Spain or they went over to over to Europe, right? And they had this whole bonding time together, right? But there was a certain energy, and I agree. I think that energy is here this year, and a lot of that I think is just from you bring in a guy like an all-star like Porzingis, right? Porzingis, I mean, just all of a sudden you saw him at the top with the Knicks. And then I feel like he kind of like just wasn't a good fit with teams. He was injured. And I feel like last year he had one of his best seasons. And then just him joining the Celtics. And then again, just Drew Holiday. They just bring a different level of excitement to this franchise we haven't had in a long time.
I mean, think about the comparison between this year and last year. Last year, we get the news a few days before camp that Ime is out, right? And this year, the news is that we added Drew Holiday. You know what I mean? There's just a totally different vibe going into the year. So I think it'll be huge for the team. From like a fan point of view, like the last time I feel this excited about a Celtics team is that Gordon Hayward, Kyrie Irving, like before that whole, and obviously that didn't go the way we wanted it to, but before that, like just having the excitement again, like, things are going to be a little bit different this year, right? Back then we were like this 1 seed, but we're probably the worst 1 seed of all time. and now we're coming in with real stars, guys that can win in the playoffs, that kind of stuff. It's similar to the way I feel this year, right? Like we're not just rolling the ball back and hoping things go differently this time, which is what I feel like we did going into this last year. Besides the addition of Brogdon, so I think it's huge. I think they're swinging.
I think Brad. I mean, credit to Brad. He's really worked on those things that we need this year. We'll go into the players here in a second. But really solve the problems. To Joel's point, we just roll the ball back. Hey, if Tatum didn't roll his ankle against the Heat, maybe we would have been in the finals, right? Like I don't want to play that game anymore. Like I want the problem solved. I want to win. I want to win that ring. So obviously, first problem solved. Joe Mazzulla gets staffed right. I mean, he had Reynolds last year. At the end of the day, he gets a lot of flack. I don't care what anybody says. I love Joe Mazzulla as a coach, not just because I'm a Celtics fan. I've seen that guy grow, even in interviews this year and the way he answers. He just holds himself way higher than his age. And his maturity as a coach is just unreal. And I really see him with the Celtics for quite a while. I know he signed an extension, but I'm talking for a while. Obviously, championships are going to help that. But grabs Charles Lee. I mean, just shows kind of the respect that he has. Like, we're not NBA players or having even a professional basketball mind. We're just fans. For someone like Charles Lee, who's probably one of the next head coaches in the NBA, to get behind a Joe Mazzulla, I think that speaks volumes about Joe Mazzulla. Same with Sam Cassell, another guy under guys like Doc Rivers, to come in and get behind him. I think it's huge.
Yeah, the biggest thing that stood out to the preseason was you could tell that Joe was trying to implement. Right, you saw the ball moving around, multiple guys having multiple 10, double-figure scores. Right, I think the ball just has a good zip to it, and then you see the buy-in on defense. You see guys getting up. That is what's going to lead us to a championship. I think is all 5 guys that are on the court buying in, locking in every single possession. That's why I love Drew kind of spearheading that in White. I think that they thought they had with their pressure they had multiple times. I saw times throughout the preseason where we're full court pressing with our starters in there. I love the tenacity that we're playing with right now. And not there wasn't a lot of mistakes throughout as well, but there's definitely an intentional brand of basketball that's starting to be played right now that I hope really takes us to the next level this year. Because I think we have the pieces in place. Now it's up to implementing it every single night in, night out, and growing as the season goes on.
Yep.
I definitely would not say I'm as sold on Joel Mazzulla as Brandon is. I definitely think it's a prove it year for him. He has a full off season, has a staff, and they like I talked about, they cleared the way for him. So they've really like gone in and bet on him being the guy at the head coach position. I'm sure the franchise is tired of the change of that position right now. So he obviously, with their performance in the Eastern Conference Finals, I think he saved his job for this year. But it's a prove it year for me. I do like some of the stuff we're seeing, right? Like even in the preseason, I know it's preseason basketball, but in the game against the Knicks, calling a timeout when they went on a run, love to see that. Love to see some of the intentionality on defense, like adding wrinkles, not being one dimensional, which I thought it was a lot of our problem last year. Is the offense and defense both could turn into being one-dimensional, and once the league kind of figured things out, which happened partway through the season, right? It started off 25-4 or something like that last year, and then things got rocky from there. I think the league kind of figured out what we were doing, and there was no change after that. So adding guys and adding other basketball minds, adding guys and other basketball minds like Charles Lee and Sam Cassell, having Jeff Van Gundy in the building, like just having that plethora of basketball knowledge, I think will be huge. So I'm really hoping. I mean, I'm hoping Joe's the guy, but I wouldn't say necessarily that I'm sold on it. And it's a huge prove it year for me for him. So, I mean, I would have fired him like 17 times last year, honestly.
I mean, I had those moments, but I think I've seen him grow as a coach, and I really am excited about what I've seen from him from the offseason. And obviously, you can talk the talk. Now let's see him walk the walk. I think I saw a good job at him. I think I saw a great response, like you alluded to, in the Eastern Conference Finals. But then also just this year, and I think also how the team they've built the roster to what he needs. How he runs an offense is what this roster is made of. So let's jump into the roster.
They're definitely leaning into Mazzulla ball, 100%.
Yeah. So speaking of Mazzulla ball, starting lineup. Mike, what are you starting with? Like, what is your ideal starting lineup? You got
I think
six starters.
I
And
think
do
it
not
changes.
say Peyton Pritchard.
No, I think like you have they obviously have White, White or Horford is always going to be the odd man. Now I think it's going to depend who we're playing from night to night, to be honest with you. I think if you have a
Yeah,
line where you're playing the 76ers and you got to go up against Joel Embiid, I think you have
I
Horford on
want
the
Al. Yeah,
one out, right? I think it's just going to night to night, and I think that's part of the buy-in of players being okay. Some nights coming off the bench, some nights starting, right? I think that's where you have to have that buy-in from the players. So I think we kind of know who they're the main four are, right? With Brown, Tatum, Porzingis, and Drew Holiday, right? I think those are your kind of your
yeah.
solid.
I feel like Drew could have some games off the bench as well, depending on
Yeah,
if White can keep up what he did. Joel, what are you thinking?
I would think that it's the two men that are switching more is probably Drew and Al. Yeah, I think Drew
Yeah,
was
that's
in
what I've
like
heard
the
as well.
2008 draft. You know what I mean? So he's been in the league for a long time. So those are guys that you want to save minutes from. And if you could save a couple minutes at the beginning of the game, every game, and I really think they want to use Drew more with Jalen. You know, those minutes without Tatum, where it's just Jalen on the floor. I think they
Yeah, it's
want
huge.
Drew out there. I think that's huge to have that playmaking out there. But my ideal starting lineup is obviously Drew, Derek, um, Jalen, Jason, and Porzingis, and I think that's what we'll see most nights, except for those nights, like you said, where we're going against like Embiid, Horford's going to be in the lineup,
Yeah,
or big guys like that, like Vucevic. Even Vucevic killed Porzingis last year, so I think those type of centers you'll see different lineups, but that's one of the exciting things about this team, right? Is it's like
we have that
it's
option. Yeah,
Swiss Army knife, right? You can pick your weapons, you can pick how you want to attack that team. So um
yeah,
I don't know. I think and I mean think about it, they announced Jalen's contract, and the one thing that comes up out of that that's newsworthy is that Derek White is a starting point guard, right? Missoula made it a point to bring it up at that press conference. So I really think that you're going to see Derek White in every starting lineup, and he's a guy that
yeah.
just plays. So he played 82
Ah,
games last year. So
yeah. I mean, you can depend on him. I think obviously, we talk about. I think Al is going to see the most games off the bench. I still expect this year for him not to play back to back. He died out in the playoffs last year. There's no doubt about that. The 3-point three ball just fell apart. So I'm fine with him taking as much rest as possible. Blowout games, hey, rest out. We saw last year more than anyone when he rested, he was a different man that next game. When he took that day
so
off,
same thing
or
in
had
the
2 days off,
finals too. Yeah, the finals the year before was that way too.
yeah,
Is when we
and it,
got
it
an
was a
extra day
different
of
Al.
rest. Yeah, it's different now, 100%. And
Now
that I
call me
mean he's
crazy, but my ideal starting lineup, I know it's never gonna happen. Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jason Tatum, Al Horford, and Kristaps Porzingis, Jalen Brown off the bench. But I
you're
know
not
you
paying
paid the
it.
man $300+ million. You have no choice. And I love Jalen Brown, but I just think the opportunity to have Drew Holiday and Derek White together, nobody's getting past them on the perimeter. If you just so happen to get by them on the perimeter, now you have to deal with Jason Tatum, Al Horford, and Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, for a defensive lineup, there's not much better than that in the NBA. There is no better than that in the NBA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I think lineups are going to be different, right? Because that's what
yeah,
matters.
Yeah.
100%.
Who's on the court to finish out games. Because that's what
Oh
wins
yeah.
us playoff games is when we're turning the ball over because we're driving and making sloppy turnovers
To the
like that
left.
this year. Like I had PTSD from Jalen Brown driving down the lane and getting stripped multiple times a game. Like
Yeah.
that can't happen. That's why I think Drew may not start games, but he for sure will finish games. So I think he has that core
Mm-hmm.
that he'll demand the ball and demand and put people in the right position and take their time, be a little more methodical with getting people good shots in the crunch time. Where that's
I
where
think
we've
one
seen
of the
the last couple of
Yeah,
years.
one of the things we're not considering too is how much they'll swap out Al and KP. Like
Yeah. We got to
there's
keep
a
him
lot.
healthy at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's a lot of like not wanting to overuse either one of those guys because Al, like, we're 2 years now where he's playing way more than he should. What did he turn 39 this year? So it's you've definitely gotten everything out of him over the last 2 years. So, and then the other thing is just with the injury concern, and then the lack of size on the Celtics bench. It's not like you really want Luke Cornett playing crazy closing minutes or closing halves for you. So
we'll get into Cornette in a second, but Al's 37 though. I mean, he's got his contract till 39. Then he wants possibly the 40th year. I mean, he's got to get used to eventual. If you're 40 years old, I mean, love him on the Celtics. I think he's a huge vet presence in the locker room. So I mean, I'm for it. Porzingis, I'm excited because of just that different offense that he brings. I think we need that mid range. But let's jump into the bench. Obviously, we included Horford kind of in the starters. Peyton Pritchard, Mike, I'll give you the honors to kick off your Peyton Pritchard expectation for this year.
Yeah, so obviously I've been a huge Peyton Pritchard fan. I love his passion for the game. From something I've always noticed in the past that's always drew me to his game, right? I always had a love for his game and the way he plays the game of basketball, right? Is I love how his pace. I love how he pushes the ball in transition. I've always loved how he's found other players there like a good shot, right? I love his shot making ability. When he gets hot, I mean, he can drop 3-4 threes in a row. I've always just liked his way that he, again, I know it's multiple times in the preseason where he just drives and just makes the easy pass, just gets guys open. That we didn't see a lot of that last year of a traditional point guard who will set the table for the other players on the team. So I love his role, and I think every game. I mean, I think he had a 26-point game. I think every kind of game went down a little bit throughout the preseason as the minutes went down. But when
went down, yeah.
Minutes, I felt like he produced, and I hope he gets a chance to have some major minutes. I think he bought, obviously I think the Celtics believe in him. They handed him a $30 million contract, so I think there's that, and I think that he can be a key piece to our bench if he plays the way that I think he can.
Yeah, Joel.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him make a leap this year, and if best case scenario I see for this guy, like he could be a guy that could be in the conversation for sixth man of the year, depending how the bench plays, right? Especially if he's the maestro, the guy making it happen off the bench. And like Mike said, his shooting just adds so much. He had a down year last year from his rookie year, but part of that I think is just role related, like the inconsistency in his minutes and all that. But he's a guy that definitely could be over 40% from three and have a huge role, right? So we're talking like obviously we're going to be hopeful for everything working out for the Celtics and talk best case scenario pretty much for everything. But I really think it's a realistic view for him to be in that conversation as one of the most impactful bench players in the NBA. And the great thing about having him in that kind of role is you don't have to worry about like the defensive liability that he could be against like your Jimmy Butlers and that kind of stuff. Like we're talking about just the regular season right now, right? So it's not something that really we have to worry about when basketball slows down, right? He can just come in off the bench, fly around, what he's really good at, and make threes and find open guys for shots. And that pushing the pace, just you love to see that coming off the bench, right? That energy and effort that he has. So I think that be a guy that we're talking about for sixth man of the year. I'm hoping.
Yeah, I think so too. I do expect a huge leap out of him. Like I'm excited to see him. I think he's got that fire under him. Like, hey, every day you got to fight for your job, kind of thing. Obviously, you got his contract now, but especially after last year, not used a ton, really worked out of the rotation. So I'm excited to see it. We need the offense. I'm excited with that. I mean, obviously the dude can shoot lights out from anywhere on the court. To Joel's point, I love the pushing of the ball. I love on defense that show that he can bring of that full court press. I think is huge. Just wearing out point guards. Defense is where I worry about. But hopefully, like Joel said, regular season he's going to hold his own for the most part. And I think this year more than anything, especially last year dealing with the Rob injuries, he's got people to back him up. Hey, go ahead, blow by Peyton Pritchard and meet Porzingis at the rim. So I think that's good. Sam Hauser, another guy, had a pretty rough preseason. Had a game or two where it looked like he started seeing the click. I mean, shooters are going to shoot. I'm not too worried about the shot. One thing I want to see from Sam, though, is something different. Like, I want to see a pump fake and drive. I want to see him do something. I'm afraid he's leaving himself as that shoot threes and that's it kind of player. And he doesn't have speed. He does get people try to pick him apart for his defense. I'm not that worried about his defense. I think he held his own last year. Players try to pick on him quite a bit. He held his own. But I just don't want him to become stuck with threes and live or die by the threes. As we saw in the preseason, I mean, I know it's preseason, but at some points he was unplayable.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like he's that type of player that we need to, like, again, like I think with the second unit, you crave him to hit those threes and to like give us a spark, because we need that
Yeah.
forward or guard position. We need some production out of it. And we didn't get that a lot of times last year, where he would, he would always go through stretches of a couple of games of like just lights out shooting, and then he would disappear for a month, like where it was just, you
Yeah.
couldn't play him because he doesn't provide. I mean, I think he's underrated. I think we all saw at times where he was actually like, he would get challenged on defense, and his defense is actually pretty,
100%.
a very
Yeah.
underrated thing, where he would slide and this again, a lot of times people would miss shots on him. So I think if he can just have that, like you said, have another, like, develop that mid range or get to the hoop, something other than just shooting threes, I think that'll help him with, again, make a layup, get a mid range shot to go. And I think as that confidence will grow in him, then a three will automatically start going. And then
Yeah.
I think a complete player. But I feel like he's got just, there's something missing there, and I hope that at some point this year it clicks, because I think it'll be a huge piece to this championship run.
Yeah, he's an important wing player for us, right? I mean, I think that's one of the things they focused on this year was adding more wing depth, but he's a player that can really stretch the floor and make it easier for the other guys, right? So, I mean, if he's not, that's the, like, to Brandon's point, right? The adding something to your game. Like, if you're not hitting shots, you just become unplayable. So, really,
Yeah.
there's not a ton much to add to that. Like, if he's not hitting shots, you just won't see the floor. There are other wing guys that they'll end up playing that can do a little bit more, like, not necessarily play make, but some just shot creation stuff. So,
Yep.
we'll see with Sam. But I mean, when Sam is at his best and knocking down threes at a decent clip, it really does obviously buoy that second lineup. But I love seeing him in that Tatum lineup without anyone else really on the floor, with just Tatum and bench players. Like, he adds another dimension, like being able to stretch the floor and getting open lanes for Tatum to drive and find him for open threes. That's huge. So it all
Yep.
comes down to if he's knocking down shots or not, which is like the most basic basketball take of all time. But that's really Sam's game. So we'll see.
Yeah. Next guy, we got Banton. I think the Celtics just picked him up because he absolutely cooked us last year when he was with the Raptors. But no, I think he's a good piece. Expectations pretty medium for him. But hopefully just a guy that can come off the bench, give us some good solid minutes. Pretty efficient shooter. Liked his energy. Showed some good heart at times during the preseason. But not much there. I just think, hopefully just a guy that can give us minutes. I'm afraid sometimes we use Jason Tatum just too much, because I mean last year we had that issue where he wasn't scoring. We've talked about that. But one guy's off our bench that can hopefully fill in those spots, so he can rest sometimes on the bench.
Yeah, I know with he started out playing some good minutes for Toronto, and then over the year and over the last I think the last couple years with them, like Toronto had high hopes for him, because he showed
Yeah.
some spots of really coming into his own. He played a lot of point guard for them. This is a big guy at 6'7". He pretty good athlete. It just, I don't think he could ever put it all together for them. So I'm hoping with a different change of scenery, different system, hopefully the Celtics can kind of maximize his potential, because he's a really big guard at 6'7", and I think he's only 23. So I'm hoping that he add some good consistent minutes. I think he can probably play the 1 through 3, just with him being a bigger guard, but have good ball skills.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's gonna have such a limited role. I mean, think about the preseason. I'm looking at the games here. First game, 13 minutes. That second game when no one played and it was just bench players, 30 minutes, 16 minutes, 12 minutes, 16 minutes, right? Those are preseason numbers. So he's probably gonna be like what, a 5-6 minute a night guy when he sees the floor. I think if you can get something from that type of player, that's huge. But he's the guy that has tools.
Not crazy expectations.
Yeah, he has tools. Like, he's got size, he's big, he can rebound, like that kind of stuff. You'd love to get more from him. But yeah, I think it's a guy that'll have a real limited role with
He
us.
looked like an NBA player. We've had a lot of players in the last years that were not NBA.
Yeah, at the end of the bench that just didn't
What's the
seem like they
problem?
belong.
It's
Yeah.
so many guys that were just like on these. Danny Ainge had like this thing for these guys that were like 5'9". We had like 3 guys that were 5.
Carson Edwards, Trayvon Waters, guys. Yeah. you
Yeah,
love them little sparks, but it was like, what were they really going to
Demetrius
contribute?
Jackson going back a few years.
like
Yeah.
Isaiah Thomas, and he just could never hit one of those. So
All right, come on.
yeah. So yeah, hopefully
Yeah, no, a guy I think they're higher sold on, and we're gonna jump to next is O'Shea Brissett. I think they have high hopes for Brissett. I do. I liked what I saw from him. I think he can really provide some offense for us. Played for the Pacers last year. It was like 6 points a game, something like that. He averaged. But I think he could have a decent role with the Celtics this year. I liked what I saw from him this year, or as far as in the preseason.
yeah, I went to a game in Indy, I think it was 2 years ago, and he dropped 30 on us. I mean, he hit probably 7 or 8 threes, and I'm like, who is this guy? Like,
Yeah,
I've heard of him before that. And he just, of course, is one of those guys that just goes off on the Celtics, and he was just lights out that night. So I'm
hmm
excited. I think he's a great energy guy. I thought he hustled really well, hit a couple shots. I think, yeah, I agree. I think he can be a big piece off our bench. It's another NBA player that can give us solid minutes at the forward position.
Yeah, so that wing depth that we just didn't have last year, like guys that actually
yep,
belong in the NBA, playing like and lightening the load, the minute load at least, right? Can you give me just a couple minutes? Like we don't need you to go out there and do 15 a night, right? Or 15 points a
yeah,
night, but can you play decent defense and be a threat on offense, right? And if he could do that, which he's showed that he can shoot over his career, he's been in the 40s a couple times from three. Like that's huge. So I think I have high hopes for him. I like the addition. I think it's an upside kind of signing, like where you're
hmm
hoping best case scenario to get a good role player. Worst case scenario, it's a low risk kind of signing. So we'll,
yeah.
yeah, I would love to see
Next
him
guy.
put it together.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No,
Um. Next guy, Luke Cornett. I I I don't know, man. I feel like with we can bundle him together with Quetta. I have high hopes for this Quetta guy, not just because he's Portuguese. He's got that Portuguese blood coming to the NBA. I love it, but I saw some great things out of Quetta. That energy, just I think with the Celtics and the way we play. I mean, Luke Cornett is slow. He can't move fast. He just doesn't fit in our offense, and he kind of can clog up that middle, right? Like the funny guy on the bench, right? I mean, he can be a lob threat here and there, but what Quetta was showing us is a huge opportunity as far as that energy, that quick pace offense, different things like that. I know he's got some things to clean up. I mean, he was the G League MVP, runner-up MVP last year. So I mean, he's been on a tear. His game's been growing, but what we saw from him, and I think that last game was a big hint that the Celtics really believe in him. That last game giving him some big minutes, and seeing him with actual rotation guys. And he looked great. So I think Cornette has got a lot to prove. I think some could be matchup based, right? But the speed and just a different aspect Quetta can offer than Cornette can.
Yeah. I loved him in the pick and roll throughout the preseason. He knows at the exact time he sets these just like bone jarring screens, and then the way that he would just maneuver himself to get open. Right. I think he seems like he's a high basketball IQ with the way that he rolls to the hoop and just waits there and like where he'll kind of pin his guy back and just always be a lob threat. When I think Pritchard threw a couple lobs up to him and he has just easy buckets. I think he makes the game easy for other players out there. I think he'd be good for a guy with like Hauser to get him good solid screens without, I didn't see him pick up a lot of fouls,
Sure,
like
yeah.
those moving screens. I think he sets really good screens, and I think he'll get guys open shots. But at the same time, he does the dirty work. I think he had 3-4 offensive rebounds that last game, and he just looks like, yeah, he's trying to get too excited about him because he's
Yeah.
but he looks.
And it was preseason, and a lot of times who he's going up against, sure, but I don't think he's going to match up well against Joel Embiid yet. But I mean, compared to Luke Cornett coming off the bench, I think he's going to be fighting for his job with a guy like Quetta.
A great size, 7 foot, 245. I mean, it's a big dude, and he seems pretty mobile though. He runs the floor well.
Yeah,
I'm excited about him. I think he just adds.
me too.
I think our biggest weakness is going to be our center position, and I think surprisingly he may kind of have an answer there if he continues to improve and learn our system.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that 100%. The thing that probably makes you the most nervous about the Celtics is their big depth. And if you can get something from Quetta, that would be huge. But like, I don't know, having Luke Cornett as the primary backup big is just a nerve
Yeah.
wracking. Like when it's KP and Al in front of him, like it's just one of those things with Al's age. Like there's got to be an injury
Yeah.
at some point. KP's injury history, you just are nervous about it, and then your next guy is Luke Cornett. But having a guy like Quetta that has tools is is like a better athlete than what Luke is, even though he looks great on finishing some lobs.
Yeah.
No, it'd definitely be something. Yeah, but that's the one thing. The one thing I would be nervous about more than anything is that these are the names we're talking about for big depth. Is Quetta name is Quetta. He can't even say his name, and Luke Cornett. So I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely an area of concern for the team.
But obviously, we don't have a lot of money, right? Like, there's not a bunch of money to spend. If you can get a guy like Quetta playing significant minutes on a two-way contract, eventually putting him into a real contract, I mean that's big time. I mean, I think of guys like Sam Hauser who's not making a line. You're talking about like, hey, I hope he can knock out some shots. Like that's what you want. Like you can't pay everybody, Jaylen Brown money, or we're going to be paying a lot in tax. So to get
Yeah,
a guy
you
like
can't
that,
have a $30 million guy a year on the bench in your backup center
so
spot.
If he pans
there's
out to
not
be,
much out there. So
I think if he pans out to be as good as we think he might be, he could be the X factor for us. Because how many years have we had backups like Tice and Cornette, and like it would just never when a main player
Tice was a starter for a while.
yeah, when a big was out, like man,
Aaron
it
Bain,
was a loss. And there
Yeah,
was when Tice was out there, it was like a layup line. Like our
yeah,
defense was absolutely no one to anchor our defense, and I think Quetta
free throws.
hopefully will give us some good minutes.
Yeah. Another guy we pick up, CV Muhalachek. I don't expect him to see a ton of minutes. I think he can put a little bit of pressure on Hauser. Kind of that three ball guy. I like the way he shot it. I think Hauser has a little bit of an edge on him with the defense. His defense was not impressive at all. And the Celtics team, who I think this year is going to be really focused on the defense, but a good guy to throw in there. I think on a back-to-back when Al's out, I think he's a good option to have in there off the bench as well. So he's a good pickup. Then I'll bundle them together with Lamar Stevens. Huge for the defense, right? Like complete opposite. But I like having him. I think he can see some minutes this year. Had some good mid range, some great mid range plays in the preseason. But the defense part, I mean, if we're gonna be sold out on this defense this year, I think he could play a huge part off that wing depth off the bench.
Yeah, the biggest thing that stuck out to me was this athleticism, and
Yeah.
he had like a couple putback dunks. He seems to have a nose for like offensive rebounds and just doing a lot of the dirty work. You could tell he was trying to earn minutes. He sat on the Cavs bench for most of last year. He didn't get a ton of minutes last year, and you could tell there's a sense of urgency out there that I think he'll play pretty good minutes for us off our bench. He's probably one of the excited players that I'm excited for off our bench. I thought he played at a pretty hit level. I was hoping he'd hit a couple more threes, but his three percentage wasn't great. But I thought he brought that energy off the bench that we need and provided enough for I think him to get decent minutes.
Yep.
yeah. I think Stevens is one of those guys that like the Cavs were kind of sad to see go, just having that defensive versatility on the bench, but it was like a money thing to get Strus in there because they really needed that 3-point shooting. Which I mean, it's not like Stevens gives you any, but having someone that can come in and play like decent wing defense, again, just lightening the load a little bit, even if it's just for a couple minutes for Jalen and Jason, I think will be huge. I think Steven is a guy that will have a role on this team, 100%. We'll
Yeah.
see
100%.
consistent minutes for him.
I see him in a very much like Grant
Yep.
Williams role, is what I
Yeah.
kind of I view him kind of the same size, but I think he might just be even a little bit better.
Hopefully
defense,
more,
a little bit,
maybe a little bit more minutes in the playoffs.
yeah, exactly.
A little less.
I don't know. I think if we need a lot of minutes out of Stevens in the playoffs, we're probably on a good spot.
So 2 guys left. We'll go over quick and let's just jump into the week ahead of us. I'm excited for. But JD Davison, not seeing much out of the guy. I feel like he's a great main Red Claw or main Celtics at this point. Then the other guy, Jordan Walsh, right? A draft pick. Celtics are high on him. I'm high on him, but I think he needs some time for development. He's not I don't think he's NBA ready by any means, seeing him out there. I do think there's an opportunity with him. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But two guys I think need some time down or up in Maine.
Yeah, I agree. I think JD Davidson not a huge fan of his game. I don't think I don't think on the Celtics roster long term. And then Walsh, I mean, I thought he was a great pick, great value pick in the second round. I just think I agree. I think he's a couple years away from being NBA ready. But I think I liked where we got him from, and I thought he showed that he got some good tools, especially on the defensive end. Hit some threes. I think he's a couple years away from being an impact on this team, but I like the draft and stash type player.
Yep,
I'd agree with that. I think there's a difference between JD and Jordan Walsh. I think Walsh could have a role in the future with the Celtics. He's just raw, and I think JD is just one of those guys that you're excited to see because it means we're up 25. So, but yeah, I mean, as far as like looking in the future, is Walsh has tools and is raw and can be developed, I think, into an NBA player. Davison just is like a guy that you hope something clicks for him and he makes a lot of money probably somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree. All right, so let's jump in. Week ahead. I am pumped for the season to start. We kick it off. A little disappointed we didn't get the Tuesday opener, but no biggie. We open up Wednesday, 7:00 against the Knicks on the road. I'm excited to play the Knicks. I know a lot of people are high on them. Personally, I think they added Dante. That's a good pickup. But you know, I've seen some of their players have declined. I don't think Randall's on an uptrend. But we did look terrible against them. Mike, me and you were in house last year when we saw that happen, and it was terrible. So I'm hoping the Celtics are going to show up, ready to play, no slow starts. I like the matchups we can have. We can talk about that, but hoping they show up with some fire. That energy that we've seen over the weeks, like I hope we see that from the tip in Madison Square Garden to open up the season and come home hopefully with a huge win.
Yeah, they always seem to dominate us on the boards. They get Mitchell Robinson's an animal on the offensive boards, and that's almost a lineup that I'd like to have Horford out there. I'd like to have the double big lineup against what is it?
Randall and Mitchell Robinson, yeah.
They're just two bigs. I personally would like to see Horford that night. I like to see Horford and Porzingis together, just because of their size, and in the preseason they were getting a ton of offensive rebounds, and that's what allowed them to stick around in that game. So, but yeah, I think
I'm okay. I think starting with Horford off the bench only because I want to see Drew and White together with their guards. But yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from with the Randall, right? Tatum going to take Randall with the size problem of the boards. You know, I feel like Randall though has become lazier where he's just jacking up those threes, a couple pump fakes and the jab steps and a three. So hopefully, but yeah, I think mainly like in the game, I want to see a lot of Horford and Porzingis together, especially when they're running Robinson and Randall together. Yeah.
I think I cannot wait to see Drew in White versus Hart and
Brunson.
Brunson. Yeah, I think that'll be a good like barometer to see where we stack up like in the guard hierarchy in the league. Like those two guys really played well, and the Knicks had a great end of the season last year, and then pulled off the upset in the playoffs. So I think I'm excited to see where the Celtics like where we match up, right? Does our double big lineup, does it look good against those bigger rebounding teams like Randall and Robinson? Can we keep them off the offensive boards, which we know was a struggle for the team last year? And then just like the defensive matchup, how do we look on defense when we're running a single big, right? Do our guards, are they enough on the perimeter to keep the ball out of the paint and stuff like that? So I think it'll be huge for us. One thing I would look out for is Jaylen Brown to have a big game. I think this is a big spot for him. I don't think they have a great defensive option for him, but I also think he's going to be coming out trying to make a point this first game of the year. And he had a huge game in that Charlotte game, last preseason game everyone played in. So keep your eyes out
Yeah.
for old JB having a big time showing in the Garden.
I hope you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
I'm excited for it. Knicks Celtics, Madison Square opening, kicking off the Celtics season. I'm excited for it. I think there's a lot of great matchups in that. Obviously, if you got their exciting players, with Brunson, the Hart. If you want to call Barrett and Randall exciting, I guess you can. Adding Dante off the bench, Grimes, players like that. So they've got a team they're excited about. So I'm Knicks to kick off the season. And then we go to the great matchup of the Celtics Heat at home opener. I guess we've called this a rivalry.
Mike, did you have something else to add about the Knicks?
I was just gonna say the greatest player of theirs is Grimes. I think Grimes
yeah.
his defense was on another level against us last year. And so I think it's a really good defense. I think they're very underrated defense as a whole. They play. I mean, Tibbs is never going to let them have an off night on the defensive end, and so I think it's really going to be a good challenge playing in their house. It'll really be interesting to kind of see where we're at to start the year. I think it'd be a really big challenge. So that's, I guess, the biggest reason why I'm excited to see how they go up against them in a hostile environment to start the season.
One of the other things too is, can we stop quickly, which was an issue for us in that last game we played against them. Like, how do the guards do this time? Because it was painful at that point of the year. Sorry to throw you off. Transition to the Heat game.
You good? No, I mean, I forgot about quickly. Yeah, I mean, that's a guy they're obviously high on. The Grimes is obviously big for them. I think there's a lot of great matchups on there. I like the test for the Celtics, right? The mental test playing in Madison Square Garden, and then the matchup test and just the different things they can throw at you. I want to see what the team's made of. I know it's early. Obviously, we got to click and different things like that. Throwing new players in. Drew just got here. Things like that. But I think perfect game to open up against and really see the Celtics. I mean, a dominating win would be huge. So yeah, Heat Celtics Friday, opening up at home. Call this a rivalry. I mean, I'll say it. I hate the Heat. I'm done with the Heat. I'm not impressed with the Heat at all. Jimmy Butler can wear his whole costume and get up year after year so he can do his pictures. I'm sick of it. I'm ready to play him. I hope the Celtics just come out firing and just put them away early. I'm sick of hearing about them. I'm not impressed. They banked their whole summer on Dame Lillard. They didn't get him. And they can cry about it. They can do what they want. Jimmy Butler can tweet about it. But they didn't get him. And instead, the Celtics in return got Drew Holiday. So really backfired on them for trying to go for Dame. And I'm excited for it. I think we can match up well. I like to see that Porzingis Bam matchup. Excited to see that. And just our team go at it. I mean, starting Kevin Love, I don't think it's gonna be good for them matchup wise. I mean, who's Kevin Love gonna guard? Things like that. So I am pumped for that game. At home. I hope the Guardian is gonna be rocking. So excited about that. What you guys thoughts on that game?
I mean, talk about Jimmy Butler moment, right? That's the thing that makes me nervous is like he's a guy that shows up in these kind of like count him out kind of things, the underdog. Like he's the guy with a chip on his shoulder. So I think it'll be a good test for this team. Like this is they're going to be trying to prove a point. The Heat are going to try and come in and rain on the parade because we had a great off season, right? So I think the intensity will be there. Like it's an early season kind of playoff game. So I'm excited to see that early in the season, see how we do on that kind of test, right? Do we get a great showing from our stars? Do they come out and ball out? Are we going to see those dead minutes or a like blown lead like we've seen so many times against playing the Heat, even in the regular season, right? So I don't know. I think both games this season, right, or to start the season, the two games. I think it's nice we don't have Charlotte week 1. We have real putting us up against playoff teams to see where we stack up and see like what we did this offseason is going to make a big difference, right? Can we go out there and play with intensity? Can we go out there and like play efficiently? Like that's I don't know. That's the stuff that I'm excited to see. Like just right out of the gates. You know what I mean? We're not easing into this. We're going in playing against teams that we've had a traditional rivalry with the Knicks, right? Over our existence, and then over the last 5 to 10 years with the Heat. So it's going to be. I'm excited for Week 1 of the season. The NBA knows what they're doing to try and steal some shine from the NFL. So it's going to be a great first couple games of the year.
Yeah, I think you're going to get that playoff atmosphere in both games. I think it's going to be,
Yeah.
I think teams are going to be gunning for the Celtics this year. I think they got a big target on their back, and I'm excited to see. I think both of these teams are going to test us mentally, and I think that was our weak spot last year. When times would get tough, the pipes would burst, right? A lot of times we wouldn't play up to our standard and our brand of basketball. So I'm excited to see again with the full offseason, with the camaraderie. I think this season is going to be a lot about, again, Tatum and Brown. I think they're going to have to step up as a whole. And I hope, again, the first 2 games, the biggest thing I want to look at is where's our defense? How are we all together on defense? I think that'll be a big input because Miami torched us because we couldn't consistently defend the 3-point line. We didn't do anything consistently on defense. And I think that's what I want to see these first 2 games, win or lose. I want to see what is our mentality. Do we have that dog in us? Miami had that dog last year. Same thing with the Knicks. We didn't have that. It was our mentality we didn't have. And I hopefully guys like Drew and I hope the guys is with maturing and really looking at this offseason or this, how the year ended. Hopefully they have that burning, that fire in them to come out this year and prove that they're the best team in the NBA.
How about a matchup for Joe, too, coming out of the gates, going against Tibbs and going against Spoelstra to start the year? So I think it just all around, it's a good test for the team to see where we are, right? Because, I mean, there was obviously things in those Knicks games that went into overtime and stuff like that I feel like Joe could have definitely done better. And then definitely that series against the Heat, right? That obviously, it goes without saying, Joe got coach circles around by Spoelstra. So see how he stacks up versus them kind of starting out. It's a great barometer to see where we are, right? We're the favorites. I think either favorites or right behind Milwaukee for the title this year. And I'd be interested to see how these games go, how those odds change like this early into the season, if they change at all or if there's any movement on them. So we'll obviously, and you can say it with everything because the whole season's in front of you, we'll see. But we'll definitely see after these first few games where we're at.
I think I like what Joel said. Like, we're not opening the season against Charlotte, right? Like, you're going to get away from in blowout games, like the basketball that we're trying to play this year. And I want to see that. And I think I'm hoping we are in those first 2 games, right? I want to see with that threat now of adding a Drew and a Kristaps, how are teams going to handle a Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum? I mean, you double, who are you going to leave open? Right. And the Porzingis, the mid-range game and putting the back of the hoop, that kind of offense we haven't seen in a while. The hard defense, right? Like it's not lining up on any play in a game like that against the Heat and against the Knicks. So I'm really excited to have 2 like high quality games like that. Hope the Celtics come out ready to play both games. And Mike said, playoff atmosphere, both games to kick off the season, kind of a nice welcome back. Now, obviously, on the flip side, right, like a lot of these guys are new to the team. They didn't get heavy minutes. We didn't use them a ton in preseason. We didn't overwork them together. Not laying out excuses, but, reality as well. There's definitely going to be kind of working back into the season, as most teams can say. But excited to have a huge test starting the season, and hopefully we'll report back next week 2-0.